I'm gonna jump right in with a hot take. The games you make should be fun. I know, blasphemy, how dare I say this? Or it's like super obvious, but you often forget about the fact that, hey, the games that you make do need to be fun to play at the end of the day. And it's something that, it sounds dumb, but a lot of developers, they get so stuck on like a specific mechanics or a specific setting or things like that, that they don't end up doing that. They don't focus on the fun anymore, and they just focus on, hey, I had this one idea in my head, and I have to implement it, and fun be damned, so to say. And they spend months on it, and then they have a game that isn't fun. We've learned now that, hey, fun-led development, which sounds like a dystopian thing a corporate company would say, is actually a pretty important part of game development. But then you already get that first problem of, hey, how do you make your game fun? And in this video, I want to talk about like 5 quick ways, basically, that you can very easily already improve the fun of your game without having to change like the entire core of your game. These are things that work pretty much for any genre of game you make to make the gameplay more fun and have it be a better experience. And the first one that honestly I think this is like 90% of all of the ways to make your game more fun already, call it my zoomer brain, but it is making your game faster. The easiest way in my opinion to make a game more fun is just to make it faster. If you're making a shooter, increase the movement speed. Even if you're making a like strategy game, we had this with Forge Industry, the game wasn't really fun when we played the game at like 1x speed. We had like implemented this mechanic where you could change the like in-game time, and we found out that everyone was playing the game at like 4x speed because it just didn't look interesting. It looked too slow, too boring and things like that. So we just made that increased speed the base speed of our game. It was much more fun to see like all of the little characters like running around very quickly versus them like just crawling at a very snail pace. Also things like, you know, racing games, very obvious. If it goes faster, it's better, but pretty much all games can benefit from being faster. It doesn't have to be double the speed maybe, but always look into, hey, how do I make this faster? And of course, there's more to this than just, oh, changing the speed value of whatever you're doing. There's a few other things you can do here. A big one that I've learned as well is, hey, if you want to make the game feel faster, let's say you have a top-down perspective, you can just zoom in more. And then just from the fact that, hey, you have less of an overview, like your movement on screen is going to be faster, even if your player movement stays the same, just because you'll be going faster through like your scene basically, or like you'll be zoomed in more. I hope this makes sense. Another thing you can do is like adding some things that would make it seem like it's fast. So things like particles, like an exhaust boost or something, or like, you know, the speed lines. Those things can help as well in making the game feel faster, and it will in return make the game feel more fun. It's something that also I see often at like when I do the trailer roast streams is I have like footage of a game and it just looks kind of boring. And then I just take that same footage and I speed it up by 2 times and suddenly the game feels much better even just looking at it. So don't be scared to make your game faster, it's probably going to pay off. And then piggybacking off this concept of, hey, take the speed value and increase it, there was this trend a while back on the Everything app, where you would take an aspect of your game and you would multiply it by like 1,000 or like 10 times and see like what is the impact of it. It could be the amount of bullets you shoot, the amount of enemies that there are, like anything based on the amount of drops, anything in your game. Just make a whole lot more of them and the game will like get like more wonky maybe, but more fun as well. Like wonkiness and fun very much tie into each other. And this is something where, hey, probably you don't want to increase the speed by 10x. It's something you could try, I guess, but just doing that, taking any variable that you can think of in your game, for example, and just scaling it up will probably also, once again, make the game feel more alive, feel more fun and things like that. We had a similar thing with Guild Architect, where we had our little characters walking around, their adventures, and we only had like 5 of them as like the default base spawn rate. But it just looked dead and empty. So I was like, hey, can we make 100 more of them? Can we have 500 walk around on screen? And suddenly the entire game feels much more alive and much more lively. And it took us like 2 minutes to just change a variable basically, and that's it. So that is once again something else that you can try out with. Just make more of whatever is going on. Make more bullets, make more enemies, any of that. It will probably pay off and it will make the game more fun. Combine that with the faster gameplay, and I think honestly at that point you already have a great experience. Now of course you can use these tips in your large scope games, like your dream games and whatever you're working on, but they are actually, I think, even better if you're working on like very short dev cycle and like game jam style games, where you only have a limited amount of time, that you can't just make beautiful looking games often, things like that, where you have to really focus on the game. And if that's something you're interested in, like making those smaller scoped games and making those game jam games, you may want to check out the sponsor of this video, Crazy Games, who are co-organizing the Crazy Web Game Jam, which takes place from November 1st to November 8th. And it has some pretty good prizes, going up to a $20,000 publishing deal for your game. Now, there are a few requirements though, of course, if you want to participate in this game jam. As you may have been able to tell from the name, you need to be making a web game and you need to be making it in Unity. Could be any version of Unity, but ideally use Unity 6 because hey, the LTS version just dropped, and also there's a bunch of other improvements there to make sure that like, hey, your web game runs as optimally as possible. Also have to make sure that your game size is under 250 megabytes, so don't make some crazy, super highly realistic game ideally, because once again, it's a web game jam. You don't want to blow up someone's computer, and you want to focus instead of, hey, making that fun game using the tips from this video. And of course, the $20,000 publishing deal is already great, but even if you end up between 4th and 10th place, you will still get a $2,500 publishing deal, which is probably one of the better game jam deals that you can get really. If you have no idea what Crazy Games is, we've made a video about them before that was really valuable for, I think, us and a lot of our audience when we visit their booth at Gamescom, so it could be an interesting one to check out as well. If all of this sounds interesting to you, you can head to the link at the top of the description down below and you can sign up, or you can read some more of the requirements and terms and conditions of the game jam. But I think generally this is a really good opportunity to try out your game design muscles, try out some of the tips in this video, and hey, just make a good game that is fun to play and maybe even earn some money from it. So once again, thank you very much Crazy Games for sponsoring this video, and let's give you guys some more tips so that you can make the games fun. And the next one that I have for you in stock is once again something that is very easy, but a lot of people forget about it, or like they push it to the side and like, we'll do this later, not understanding the actual impact that it has. And that is making your game, is having your engine muted and you don't actually hear your game. You're like vibing to your own music or whatever, like in the zone programming. I think that's bad. I think one of the first things, and it's one of those things that, will it have a lot of value on like day one? Probably not, but it's still a good thing to do, is adding music and adding sounds. Especially music does so much in terms of getting the vibe of your game across. If you're making a horror game, well, of course, I think one of your top priorities should be finding a certain ambient soundtrack, adding some like sound effects of the creaking doors and whatever, and putting that on top of it. If you're making more of a fantasy city builder, add some like more nice and upbeat music. The music is something that it sets the vibe of the game, and it's not something that you interact with yourself, but it very clearly ties the entire gameplay together. Try playing some of your favorite games in dead silence and it's just not fun anymore. Making those sound effects, you don't have to go all out. You don't need to have like 17 sound effects for like every single interaction already. But some big ones, for example, are like movement, interacting with specific items, attacking something. And this is also a good check as well, not related to the fun, to make sure that you're not going to get sick of your like music. If you make some music or you get some sound effects in your game and you try it out for like 10 minutes, but after that you're like, actually I don't like this music, let me just mute my engine again and keep working. Well, if you don't like the music, probably your players will not like it as well. So it's actually a good incentive for you to spend some more time looking at, hey, what are some good music and sound effects for my game? For the Unicycle Pizza Time, for example, the music was very critical because that like very high BPM and kind of like almost stress-inducing music was part of the entire experience. It just fits together so well. So I was always playing it with the music as well because I didn't get bored of it after listening to it for 100 hours. So probably other people playing our game won't get bored of this as well. And it just adds so much more to the vibe. So find some music. You can find free music very easily, honestly, on things like the Unity Asset Store or itch.io. And otherwise a great resource as well is if you just track like some Humble bundles. They often have like these bundles where you get 1,000 songs or something for 30 bucks. You don't have to really pay a lot of money for it. I would generally also just not suggest composing custom music because it's very expensive and most likely not worth it in the beginning. Just finding some assets, throwing them in your game. You can do it very cheaply and it will have a massive improvement on how does your game feel. Another quick one, and this is one that honestly I think game jams are actually better with even than like full-on games, is sometimes you have all these mechanics in your game, but they just make everything confusing and less fun. And it's sometimes better to just have a more limited amount of mechanics in your game and going all in on just one or two of them versus having 10 different mechanics that all of them kinda not suck, but they're not all fun. And because you're working on 10 of them at the same time and then they like interact with each other, it gets much harder to tweak them and make them all fun individually. And then of course the overarching thing together. With game jam games, you have this really well where there's basically only one mechanic you can have and you need to make the fun out of that one. I think that's something that you can learn for your own games as well, where hey, you don't need to have 10 different mechanics. You just need to have 1 or 2 good ones and focus more on that. So this is more of a, hey, look at the game you've been working on. What is something that genuinely isn't fun and you've been like coping and you've been like, oh no, I'll fix it later, I'll make it more fun later. I think it's actually just worth it to get rid of it. So don't stare yourself blindly on like, hey, I need to have 10 mechanics. No, you just need to have some good mechanics. That's what I said at the beginning, my hot take. Your game should be fun. It shouldn't be like a whole like coding masterpiece, because your players don't care about how much effort you put into the mechanics. They care about how fun is the game to play, and even if that means that hey, there's less mechanics, but there's more fun, that's already good. And then this last one that is honestly like a cheat code often is adding a timer or some sort of scoreboard or pressure basically for people to play your game. This is twofold. First of all, this gives them something to strive towards. Like if they can see the timer, they will automatically be like, oh, there is some pressure. Whether the timer counts up or counts down before you die, there's value in that. And it's something that once again, you code this super easily, add it to your game, and it often makes it like have that extra layer of like more the psychological effect of playing a game. And the second big advantage is it immediately adds replayability to your game. You may have a game that, hey, you finish it once and then it's like, okay, I'm done. Let's keep going and like, let's start another game. But then we saw this with Unicycle Pizza Time, where, okay, you've played the entire level and it's like, okay, I've played the level, I'm done, I move on to the next game. No, you have a scoreboard, you have your timer, and it's like, oh, you took 17 minutes to finish this level, and this one random guy, he did it in 4 minutes. Guess what? You're going to keep doing it again, and you can see yourself improve, and that self-improvement, once again, as the player, is another way that, you know, it's very rewarding and it is fun once again. So having a big score and seeing like, hey, there is so much more room for me to improve the next run, basically, is another great way to add more fun, add more replayability to your game. And it doesn't even feel cheap, honestly, often, because it's like, yeah, I am working towards something. It's not just replayability for the sake of replayability. No, it's like going into that primal human thing of I need to be better than this person. I need to be better than previous me even. Like if my old time was 17 minutes, I can now do it in 15, or I can get a higher score like that. And that already, that competitiveness that you basically create with either yourself or other players does a lot as well in making your game more fun. So I think definitely there are some things that you can implement with your game from this video today, basically. I'm curious, have I missed any other ways to make your game more fun in a somewhat easy way? Share them down below in the comments. If you're a good one, I'll pin you. If you have something to share with the rest of our audience, you guys have some good ideas as well. This is pure game design at the end of the day, most of these things. So it's something that isn't too hard to like implement quickly. You do not need to have 10 years of experience to speed up your game, for example. Like some of the things with fun is like, yeah, it's innate to the game design mechanic I come up with, but some of it you can almost cheat by just make game faster or make more enemies on screen. So I hope this video still was interesting. Once again, thank you to Crazy Games for sponsoring this video as well. And you can sign up to their game jam down below and participate. And hey, maybe get some good publishing deals for your games along the side as well. If you're new here, we make 2 videos every week talking about game development. So if that's something that you're interested in, be sure to head down below and subscribe, as it makes me feel better, honestly, and you get these videos delivered to your inbox directly, so you never miss one of the videos that we make. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!